Great. Well, hi everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Marczak. I'm doing my master's at the University of Cincinnati, and this is my project on temporal use of caves by Virginia figured bats in Kentucky. I will preface this research is preliminary. This is just what I've gotten so far after one field season and just starting data analysis. So it's very ongoing. But for a little background research, we all know the Virginia figured bat is federally listed. They were listed in 1979 due to habitat loss and human disturbance, and that gets a little bit into my project in a second, but they are native to the Appalachian region of North America, and there are actually 4 genetically distinct populations located in different geographical regions in this area, but the only recovery unit and geographical region I'll be concerned about is that in Kentucky. So, as we all know, they are also cave obligates, with their hibernaculums often differing from their summer roost sites, those maternity sites, pasture sites, whatever they choose to use. So in order to have access to all these sites at any given point in the year, we have congregated this study into the Daniel Boone National Forest within this Western Recovery Unit in Kentucky. So the big question I want to address, first and foremost, is why do this study? Well, a little bit of a preliminary literature review I did for this project on covey. Everything I found I kind of condensed into these 3 bullet points you'll see up above. We won't talk too much about that because you can go read the literature on that. You can see what's done before, but what I found that hasn't been done, most importantly, is we have not been able to show cave use year-round. And I think the main reason for that is we have not had the technology to do that. So now we are using the new technology. We can show cave use year-round because unlike before, where people couldn't be at those caves every minute of every day, counting bats, doing emergence counts, doing heart trapping, now we have the technology to do that for us, which I'll get into in a little bit. But on top of that, we can also define the different roost types since we're able to document that cave use year-round. And also, we can document exactly when disturbance happens at these different sites. So we can go into these caves, see graffiti, see beer bottles on the floor, see evidence of fires, but now with these trail cameras that I'm going to show you in a second, we can document the exact date and timestamps when it happens and see if the bats have a response to that after the fact. So our goal for this study was to document the temporal patterns of cave use by covey and describe the differences between these roost types at the local and landscape level. On top of that, I also want to quantify human and mesopredator disturbance at important summer and winter roost sites. So you can see that is actually a trail camera image I captured of a person going into a roost where a bat was looking for those bats. So the study design for this project, this actually began in May of 2024 before I came onto the project, and I put out way more cameras than I knew I could possibly do within the summer, but there are actually 58 total cameras, trail cameras present on the landscape at the moment, spread across 36 different caves within the Daniel Boone. And those are varying between being both inside and outside the caves, just inside, just outside, depending on the size of the cave, the outside look of it, different factors. On top of this, we've also put thermal infrared cameras in 5 different caves. That was also done before I came on the project, but we're working through that data now. Those were put in more major caves where we'll see a higher index of activity by those bats. Trail cameras would die a lot quicker. These thermal infrared cameras can do it at a much larger scale. And additionally, we also put hobo data loggers and psychrometers within the caves where we know these roosts to be or where we predict they'll be based on guano, staining, all that stuff, to try and record the temperature of exactly where they're roosting, so I can later see if perhaps there's a correlation between temperature and their preference for where in the cave they roost, or specifically what caves they choose. So the big question again that I also want to dive into is why use trail cameras of all things? Why not use acoustic recorders or all that stuff we've used in the past? Well, specifically, we can measure presence and absence of bats year-round and 24/7. They can record for months at a time, and I can go in, pull out those SD cards, and it can just sit there. But also, it is much less invasive. Those bats don't know those cameras are there. I'll go in when the bats are not present. If they are present, I'll do an emergence count, wait for those bats to leave, go in, change out these trail cameras or put them out, and they can record no light, no sound, seeing those bats 24/7. But again, it can record exactly when those disturbances happen. So I have a date and a timestamp now for when that bear entered that cave, and I can see did the bats leave and go to a different cave after the fact. So for the data analysis for this project, I'm filtering out all the trail camera files that I have so far for bats, people, or mesopredators. So far I have 196 files to download, and they are still recording to this day. The bats in the thermal videos were counted using a camlytic software. So as a bat flies across the lens, it counts it as an independent object, and it can count all those for the caves where we see a lot of bats flying all at once. I'll run some generalized additive models to measure any non-linear relationships in R, and I'll do that later. I've not done that yet, but I'll test these with variables like temperature, time of year, even disturbance occurrences, or even vegetation cover to see if anything has a connection to why these bats are choosing these specific caves versus another one. And then I want to make a note here that what you're about to see in these graphs is number of photos, not number of bats. It does not assume a one-to-one index, but it does assume a proxy for the number of bats that we expect to see on those graphs, and we can compare those with previous done surveys to test the reliability of these cameras and these number of photos. So I came up with a couple of hypothetical graphs to have you guys see what I expect to see for these graphs. So if it's a hibernaculum, I want to see it peaking right around March and October when we see those bats leaving or entering that main hibernaculum with little to no activity during the summer and winter months. On the other side of the spectrum, for a maternity curve, I want to see it peaking in those summer months when those bats are going into their main maternity season with their juveniles, birthing, all those mothers are doing the things they need to do for this species. In between, a possible shoulder season curve would be those curves much lower in numbers than those hibernaculums or maternity sites, but those sites where those bats are coming out of hibernation, not ready for maternity season just yet, and are choosing these caves to wait out a little bit. And then the last one, possible random curve. So this could peak at any point throughout the year and have any number of peaks of any height. It is no set trend whatsoever. So the first one I wanted to show you was the thermal videos. You can see number of photos gets well into the 2000s for this cave. This is a very, very important cave, but it does exactly what I wanted to do. It shows two distinct peaks right for that hibernaculum season, right around March and right around October with little to no activity through the summer. Now, people may question, well, you see a couple of different peaks throughout the summer of lower activity than those higher indexes, but we can verify that with previous data from our data sets. Harp trapping and emergence counts over the summer show very little activity, but also they are all males. So we can verify that it is bachelor season, it is a bachelor roost during the summer, not a maternity roost. This is a hibernaculum, but also we can see with harp trapping, those numbers go up right when we expect them to, around September, October, as they're entering the hibernaculum. Another important cave, Johnson Cave, is known for being a maternity season roost, but now we can verify this index of activity in the summer months for being maternity season. We can see it's much more active during the summer months compared to the winter months. But a cool thing about this camera is if we were able to not survey during those winter months and only survey during the summer, this can now do it for us. So it can show us they are still using the cave in winter when we're maybe not able to be out there surveying. But we can also verify that it's in fact a maternity roost, by the number of females that are caught over the majority of males when it's harp trapped, but also the females are lactating and post-lactating, and there are juveniles in there. So one cave that I wanted to show you, we're into the trail cameras now. This one is very, very interesting. So it seemed to show a shoulder season curve with very little activity, ran this over the summer. This is just what I've been able to analyze so far for this cave. But in the past, this was actually a maternity site. So when they surveyed this cave before, they found pups, they found lactating mothers in high numbers in this cave, but it seems to fluctuate. So some years they may use this cave for maternity purposes, some years they may not. So I'm looking forward to analyzing this cave for a couple more years and see if it continues to fluctuate and possibly why. Is it temperature? Is there someone disturbing that cave we don't know about? And we can do that with the cameras. But we can also see the reliability of these cameras. You may wonder why it goes from nearly 600 photos to none within the span of 24 hours. Now, unlike acoustic data or being there to survey in person, we have visual confirmation. So you can see on May 7th of 2025, we have 4 bats hanging around, 1 flying into meet them, not many using the cave. In the span of less than 24 hours, it goes to this. We have quite a large cluster in the corner there. So many bats hanging out in that wall. It's a little blurry, but you can see they span all the way back to that back wall. And then in less than 3 hours, it is like this. 2 large clusters, bats flying all around in the middle of the day. It is very, very active, so it is triggering that camera every second. But in the span of, again, less than 24 hours, we see nobody. 1 bat was flying around for a couple minutes, triggering that camera, and then left. So it's very curious to see why do they go from using this cave for 1 day to not at all. So I'm curious to know if it's temperature or something else once I get into the real analysis of it. Abney Cave, this is a cave we see a lot of human disturbance, but you can see it is very, very random in terms of its usage. It can peak at any different point, at any different month or day. They go from using it 1 day to using it not. And also compared to the other graphs, our photos are much, much lower, into the 40s rather than the 600s. And we can verify that with our counts before. The bats are only a handful of bats at a time using this cave. So we know that this spruce is very, very randomly used. It's not of any significant importance. The last one I want to show you was what we call Broke Leg Cave. This one was found in 2022, and it was found to be a maternity site, but it also shows some possible shoulder season curves on top of that maternity season curve on a lower index. But using these trail cameras, we can now verify that it's both. It can be a shoulder season and a maternity site. If we had just surveyed it in person, we may have only thought it was a maternity site. And we can verify that, again, it is a maternity site based on the juveniles that were found in the cave when it was found. And again, we have visual confirmation to see these bats are in this cave during this time in relatively large clusters altogether. So another thing I wanted to touch on real quick was the temperature data I've got so far. This is Cave Bridge Rock House. This was only started surveying in January. And it's very, very short for this temperature data. But what I found was every time the temperature dropped, these bats seemed to show up in large numbers, large clusters, triggering that camera every few seconds. And as the temperature drops again, they show back up. But when that temperature climbs, they seem to go somewhere else. So I'm excited to analyze this temperature data for the entire year for every cave I've got and see if this trend continues, see if there's actually a connection there. But and what's next is all preliminary, so I'll finish analyzing all that trail and thermal camera data for the bats, humans, and mesopredators. I'm hoping to put more cameras out within those caves to get all optimal angles and make sure that it's not just the bats flew into a corner I couldn't see and my counts are wrong. I want to be sure I'm capturing all bats within that cave. But I'll run my generalized additive models to compare the temperature data and possible human disturbance to see if it plays a role in their reselection of these caves. So with that, I'd like to give a special thank you to Barb for taking me to all these caves in the start of my field season. She was great every single day out there with me, but also to all the people that has helped me get out to these caves and provide funding. You guys have been great, so I appreciate it. But thank you. I'll take any questions if you have any.
So have you looked in the literature to see if there's anything about bats congregating in one area from like a lot of different areas before they go to their final site?
I have not
migrating
found.
birds or something?
No, I couldn't find it. I need to look a little bit deeper in the literature, and that'll come when I'm like actually doing my thesis. But from what I could find when I was trying to do that little mini literature review, I couldn't find anything on it.
Hey Zoe, I learned recently that eye buttons make ultrasonic noise. Doesn't seem to be enough to impact the bats, but do trail cameras make ultrasonic noise?
Not that I could tell, no. They don't seem to show any any behavior to show that they know the camera's there. They're not looking at it, they're just flying by, they're doing their own thing. And there's quite a few cameras that I'm still analyzing where they'll stay there for days at a time and not seem to wake up at all. So I could test it, I'm not so sure.
Did you get any pictures of people or other creatures creating disturbance?
I have quite a few, yeah. Abney is the one where I've gotten people practically every day through the summer. It's a very high traffic cave, and you can see them going up, taking flash pictures right in the bat's face, and that bat flies off the wall and it goes away. But also, we've gotten a few weasels, otters going in the cave. None snatching a bat, thank goodness. Yet that would be kind of cool, but disappointing to see on camera. But quite a few animals go into those caves.
Be interesting if you'd show those pictures next year.
Yes, yeah. I'll find them. They gotta be there somewhere.
And the observation of the Virginia big-eared bat at Roke Lake going out to the entrance and kind of like basking in the sun.
Yeah.
You never
yeah.
see that in bats, and she had a picture showing that in another presentation.
Broke Leg, there's been a couple cases. Broke Leg is one that's been very fascinating because those bats are awake all throughout the day, in the sun, just sitting on the wall in direct sunlight. It's a very fascinating behavior. Yeah.
What type of cameras are you using?
So the trail cameras are Tacticam and Medaze style cameras. So the Medaze are a little bit on the cheaper side. So if it's an area where I know I'm gonna have people coming and possibly disturbing, I've had 3 cameras stolen so far at Abney. So any break in the graph that I'll make where there's no data is because my camera was stolen. So I'll use the Medaze because they're a little bit cheaper and I'm not so worried about the financial burden.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Zoe.